It's that time of week once again. Welcome back to the Disruptive AF podcast. It's your favorite time where we are talking about the edge of innovation right here with myself, Trigger Jordan, and my favorite broseph, Dan Holter, who is bringing us the truth and innovation each and every week. And Dan, I got to be honest, I'm really, really, really excited about this podcast. I really am.
I'm pretty excited myself.
I can tell and I can feel it. I can feel it in the bones through the airwaves right now. Listen, there's
freak out like that.
there are a lot of exciting things we talk about here on Disruptive AF at the edge of innovation. But one of them that is honestly has transformed the way the Air Force thinks, the way that we move, the way that we acquire things is literally this organization called RAPIDx RAPIDx that has really broken the mold for how we're able to quickly move through the acquisition environment and contracting. And today we have with us the madam, the myth, the legend herself, Carrie Martin, who there's so much that we can describe about her right now, but we're just going to get straight into it. I'm not even going to read the liner because there's so much that she has done. There's not enough words to describe it. So Carrie, welcome to Disruptive AF podcast. We're so glad to have you with us.
Hi, thank you for having me on.
Well, for sure. So first, tell us where you're from and a little bit about your background, and then we'll dive into RAPIDx and everything that has been going on in your world in the last several months. Because oh my gosh, just hearing about it before we started, it's amazing. So where are you at right now, and kind of what's your background?
So I'm here at Shepherd Air Force Base. I work for the 82nd Contracting Squadron. As far as my background, I'm actually from here in Wichita Falls, Texas. I started working here in contracting in 2009 as an intern. I was working here while also playing college softball. So I've always kind of been mad as far as wanting to overcommit myself to things because I was a Division II athlete. I graduated college early. So I started my master's and had to be full-time in my master's to be able to continue playing softball. And then I was full-time here because the internship program ended once I got my bachelor's degree. So that's kind of my background there. I became a team lead in January 2016 and then have recently promoted up to the flight chief of our specialized acquisition flight.
Wow.
While being parallel to involvement with the RAPIDx team. Because RAPIDx is, we'll talk more about that later, but it's kind of more of a movement rather than an organization.
Yeah.
No, so what I'm getting from that is that you have a little trouble getting motivated to do things.
Right.
Don't be so lazy, Carrie. Come on.
Yeah, pick it up.
Oh, that's wild. So before we started, you were actually mentioning not only your involvement with the 82nd Cons and RAPIDx, but personally, you had a lot. I mean, this is a great snapshot of our people across the Air Force. So your husband's been deployed for the last 7 months.
Yes.
Right. That's enough of a challenge. Not alone. That also including that you have a toddler at home.
I do.
And you just decided to move houses.
I did. And I moved houses because I'm in the process of building a house.
Oh my gosh. And then you have the COVID response taking place, which I'm sure has just been, in regards of RAPIDx that we're getting into talking about. So you have had so much going on, but you still have time to be able to jump into RAPIDx and be able to really launch into, as RAPIDx has been hugely important with this whole pandemic.
Yes, for sure. It's too important and it's too exciting not to be involved in it. So it's kind of like one of those things that, you never work a day in your life if you love what you do.
Yeah.
It's kind of those things like you're willing to be overcommitted and to spend that extra time when you want to be involved in something so badly.
Yeah.
So I've been hearing a lot about this RAPIDx thing. And all I'm really understand about it is that it's an acquisitions like innovation sort of initiative or team. Can you just dig into that a little bit? What it is that RAPIDx is and kind of how it got started?
Yes, I can. So Lieutenant Colonel Jorge Manresa, a year ago, actually, exactly a year ago, I was in Las Vegas at a workshop that he decided he was going to put on because he was determined that there were these other contracting tools out there that we were not taking advantage of. So in a roundabout way, we had made that connection, and we had decided we were going to send 2 people to this workshop in Las Vegas. And that's when Colonel Manresa, and we were at the AFWERX Vegas hub, and he taught us about using some of these tools like a CSO, a SIBR contract, kind of a little bit about the challenge prize process. And he just kind of decided, you know what, we're going to do a follow-on workshop. And he kind of got people drawn in to attending these workshops to learn more about these tools. And that's when he kind of reached back to us at 82 Cons and said, hey, we want this to be more of just a workshop. We don't want to just call it a RAPIDx workshop where basically it's like rapid acquisition mindset. We want to make it a movement. And so he kind of coined the term coalition of the willing, and he reached out to us. He's actually the reason we implemented some pilot training, integrated training device BPAs, because he was like, there's a need in AETC for these pilot training devices, and everyone's trying to buy this stuff, but it's lagging longer than it should. He's like, you guys should look into creating an AETC-wide BPA that's decentralized, that all of our pilot training units can buy off of. So initially, we were just a group of misfits within our local squadron that said, we're going to do something different. And BPAs are supposed to be simple, and we struggled. So getting that mindset and learning to be innovative is not something that sometimes comes naturally.
Yeah.
And so I would say that's kind of where the whole ball started rolling for RAPIDx. And then we just decided that we were going to just call it the RAPIDx team. We pulled people in from across our squadron. And so everyone worked in their own flights. But on these special projects, you were part of RAPIDx, and you were kind of earning your badge and your keep. And then it's been like a grassroots movement. It's been culminating and evolving. And every workshop that Colonel Manresa holds, we pull in more people. And so my mission was I went to every workshop, but I brought somebody different from my squadron every time to get people excited. And as they were involved in these projects, it was kind of like, hey, you're the next one coming to the workshop. Because you've been working really hard, and you need to see what we're doing. And now it's kind of culminated into Colonel Manresa's leading the charge on the COVID response as far as supplementing all the acquisition stuff. And we've got RAPIDx cells, and we're doing workshops virtually every week to bring more people on board.
Yeah, that is, I mean, I love finding the similarities from week to week to week when we're talking about innovation, when you're talking about getting that mindset. And again, Dan, we find ourselves talking about another phenomenal movement where people say, you know what, it was kind of hard to get started. It was kind of hard to break through that ground. And frankly, there's probably some parts where it's like, oh man, you're kicking off the rust. You're kicking off the kind of the way that we've been doing business for a long time. It's like you throw that to the side and you're launching into this new thing. What were some of the challenges that you had? And you can, if you would, be as transparent as you can, because that's one of the things that when we talk about breaking out of the mold and getting into a new mindset and kind of breaking out of that past, it's a challenge. Why? What was that you guys went through?
So I would say contracting is a very traditionalist kind of career field. This is how you do a contract. This is how we've always done it. Even like the BPAs, Air Force years ago was like, we're not doing BPAs anymore. We can't track them. It's hard. And so when Lieutenant Colonel Manresa was like, we're going to do BPA, I was like, I've been in contracting 10 years and I've never done one of those. And so the regs on it are so simple, right?
What are BPAs real quick?
It's a blanket purchase agreement. So basically it's not even a contract. It's like, I'm going to work with you, company, and I'm going to pre-negotiate some set prices. And so we've done the legwork for other people who now can come in and just make orders off of that as individual units.
So for user, if I can just walk people through this, because I'm a pilot that doesn't know contracting or now I do, but I didn't. So when we said, hey, we want to buy these VR things, I didn't realize that the normal standard process of acquisitions mean you have to put out a bid, a request, people bid on it. You have to wait 30 to 60 days to come back. That's the normal process. If you have something that is outside the normal and you say, hey, I need to purchase this specific thing, you as the individual who wants to buy it has to go out and compete it 3 different ways to be able to make sure that you're getting the best price, and then come back and get all the paperwork lined up for it. And if you're an operator at the unit, I don't know how to do this. Like, I don't know how to do this. But what a BPA, a blanket purchase agreement, does is it says, hey, you've already negotiated this. You've already talked to the businesses. I, as a user, can literally just say, hey, I need 10 of these.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And then the nice thing about that is too, is if you've got a government purchase card holder, things that are pre-negotiated on a BPA, you can use your GPC card up to 25,000 when normally you can only use your GPC card up to 10,000. So the BPA also gives you more flexibility as far as being able to swipe your card instead of even reaching out to your contracting squadron to get them to place the order to begin with. It gives you a little bit more flexibility.
Yeah, I think that this conversation really highlights what, like, because I'm really interested in digging into the value to the airmen that you're bringing, because one of the things that's bothered me about the whole, the acquisitions for me as somebody who's been junior enlisted most of my life is I'm like, I know that this technology exists, right? I know what I can do on my cell phone or on software on my computer at home. I'm not allowed to do things that well at work because we don't have it. And that whole process is just this mysterious place where people speak a whole other language. And the second I put my foot in the door, I'm like, I do not belong here. So I'm really fascinated with this idea of making those, that sort of complex world more accessible to the end user.
So you're gonna end up making me take a tail to a different direction, because you mentioned something, and we've built something actually at 82 Cons to help with that, right? Because you feel lost. So we actually have a website, 82cons.com, and we've built several doodly videos that go through basically telling you, what is a Form 9? What is that? What is a requirement? How do you build an independent government estimate? If you are doing a requirement, what are the things that you need to be able to give your contracting squadron in order to purchase it? We also have a decision tree on it too. So that way it can kind of walk you through, like, can I use my GPC card or do I have to go down the contracting path? So we built that website as a resource for users. That's something we've been trying to highly publicize. And then as we continue to develop it, we take feedback. And so as people are like, that's great, but you didn't talk about this, and I need to be educated on this process, and then we go into making a new video. So we're producing all our own videos for that.
That is huge. Jordan, if we can make sure, let's get the link to that where people can just copy and paste it through it and there, go to the website and find the information. Is that on AFNet, on the government network?
So most of it is accessible on AFNet. So we did put all the videos on MilTube, so that way they can be checked through the AFNet. The only thing that does not work right now is our Zing tree, which is the decision tree app. So you have to do the decision tree on a commercial network.
That's huge. I mean, first, thank you for doing that. Jordan, we'll make sure we get the links so people can have the links to be able to go to that, or at least send it to themselves so they can get it on AFNet. That is absolutely huge. And you summarize something there that's absolutely important that Dan started talking about and going down the path of getting it easy to use for the operator. Because I've been in the Air Force for 12 years now, and ask me how many financial or acquisition or contracting classes I've had as a pilot to teach me that process. I know
How many have you had?
None. I don't know. But then you move up and educate. You move up in positions, and you have additional duties, and you get involved in this, and somehow you're supposed to just figure it out. But that's the nature of what innovation is you find.
Yeah, and I think that most of the time what happens is there's this assumption that we don't get to have those things. Like, I know a lot of people who are just like, yeah, I don't know, the people upstairs, they get to pick what we use to do our jobs, and we just have to live with that, which is crazy when you think about it, because who knows how we can do our jobs better? It's us. It's the people doing our jobs, right? So if we could identify a better way than just getting that stuff that's currently in the minds of those acquisitions professionals, and make it accessible to people on the ground, that's such an exciting idea for me.
That's huge. Hey, we're going to take a break real quick. And when we come back, we're going to dive back into with Carrie what has been going on with RapidX during this whole COVID movement, the importance of what that has meant, of how much has been able to help. And then also, what does it mean for you, the listener out there at your unit, wherever you're at? What does RapidX mean to you, and how can you utilize it to be able to help you get the things you need to be able to do the mission the best you can? Okay, we're going to be right back here on the Disruptive AF podcast. Thanks for tuning in right here.
Are you listening to this podcast and wondering what you should do to get started? Join AFWERX weekly office hours call to hear about different resources and programs available to you and the rest of the defense innovation community. Tune in at the link in the show notes every Monday at 1 p.m. Central to hear more.
Hey, welcome back to Disruptive AF podcast. I'm here with my good friend Trigger Jordan and my new friend Carrie Martin with 82 Cons. She's the flight chief there and the RapidX lead for AFWERX operations support. So we covered some of the stuff that 82 Cons or RapidX specifically is like particularly doing on the edge of acquisitions, right? But there's still this whole other world there of acquisitions of the traditional process. And I would imagine that you probably have a ton of people who are like, that's where the acquisition is happening, right? It's happening on the edge. And they're like, let's go to the new thing. Where would you have people start? Where would you have an airman, a flight chief, or whoever at the unit level start if they have a need that they've discovered, and there might be a capability out there that they just want to get their hands on?
So honestly, and this is something where we see people kind of misstep. You guys want to get contracting involved early and often. So reaching out to your local contracting squadron to help you plan your acquisition. So something General Holtz really coined is mission-focused business leader. So we are not only the trigger puller on executing your requirement, but we are here as business advisors to help you plan your acquisition. Because the reality is if you know what you need, I need this widget, it does X, Y, and Z, and I need it to have this certain capability added to it as well, and you know all of that, then a traditional contracting process may be exactly what we can do. There's lots of vendors available for that. We can maybe use simplified acquisition, put it on the streets, get quotes back, get it awarded very quickly. So we don't want people to think that every acquisition requires some kind of innovative approach. Innovation sometimes can be remembering that the traditional process works for a reason. And so I think sometimes we get out on the edge and everyone wants to live on the edge, and sometimes we overcomplicate things. And so I would say RapidX is big about knowing our full toolbox and realizing that a good portion of the tools in the toolbox are traditional tools that we've always been using.
Yeah. And where would they go to reach those traditional tools? Because, like I don't think that I was ever, and it sounds like the website was at 82cons.com. Is that right?
Yes.
Has some of those, has some of those pathways and to access, I think it makes sense that we don't want to be throwing out the baby with the bathwater, right? But that we should probably be changing the bathwater, not to get too deep into that allegory. But where do we get started at that ground level? Where would you suggest that people turn first?
To be quite honest, what we do a lot of customer education here at Shepherd Air Force Base, just because we want to make sure people are not going down that lane. I would say the very first thing you do is you raise your hand and you get in touch with your local contracting squadron. Because even with our resources on 82cons.com, every single squadron and executing unit is going to have maybe their own templates or their own isms to get started. And so I just think that is incredibly important to make sure that is something that they are reaching out to, because you never want, as a contracting officer, to have someone bring you something and they've picked a large business sole source, and they're wanting to just feed it to you because we do have certain regs that we have to meet. So if you guys didn't know, we have socioeconomic goals that we have to meet as far as small business. We have competition goals where we have to compete things. And a part of that is to being fair for all, because we are the government, right? If we were individuals and we found something that works, we're just going to go with that every single time. But it's our money and our time that we're spending. And so being that we work for the government, we have an obligation to kind of be fair to all. And so that's why our laws are written the way they are. And so if they get in touch with their contracting team up front, it keeps them going down the right path. And that helps ease up some of those frustrations when they think that they've got a plan, when their contracting person can go, nope, go forth with that plan, or nope, here's the things you need to look at first.
You know, there is something really important in what you just said about getting connected up front first, because for us, you were there helping us through this process as we were going through this whole UPT VR simulation buy-in software and a bunch of other stuff. Is that when we looked at, as a Spark Cell, we looked at the process of acquisition, how long it took to be able to get it, from the time that we said, hey, we need to get this thing, to the time that we actually received the thing, or that the purchase order went out to be able to do it. It was extensive. And initially we looked at it and we said, oh yeah, why isn't contracting factor? Why isn't acquisition factor faster? The reality was, it was our limitation we were imposing upon ourselves by waiting to the very last minute to bring them into the fold. And when we actually brought contracting in, we brought the RA in, and we brought FM into these conversations of the things we need to purchase, everybody was able to go out and start focusing on what they needed to do to streamline it. And we saw a process go from about a month and a half to get something done to about a week and a half, literally, because you bring people into the conversation. They identify what it is that they need to do. They identify maybe the resource or the avenue they can do it, and they're out. So when you actually submit it, it's not you didn't add that form. You didn't do this right. It's no, everything's lined up. We know what we need to do, and we can press submit and get the button done. Now, it's not always that fast, but it's seriously, I'm telling you, it's game changing. It's mindset changing.
In fact, sometimes getting in touch with us, we know that tools are available that you don't. So for instance, we had two organizations both trying to buy Motorola LMRs. Super simple buy, but since we knew that they were both trying to buy it, we were able to combine them into one purchase and get it pressed forward more quickly for both of them. And we didn't have to duplicate workload on our contracting team. Or with the BPAs, we could establish a BPA we have one for boots for some of our tech training. So instead of them doing a buy for boots every time, or any organization, so when someone comes to us and they go, I want to buy some boots, we go, oh, great, we've already got a BPA for that. Tell me how much you need and we can execute. And they might have gone through a lot of time and effort doing their own research and finding their own prices and everything else, when we already knew that there was a vehicle in place that we could quickly execute for them.
Yeah. That's so useful. That reminds me of this thing that I think about a lot of times with innovation, where I think that a lot of times when people break through a barrier, they are like, we did it, and then they start sprinting, right? And they fail to think of the fact of whether they left the trail behind them available for other people to use after them. I really like that idea of the blanket purchase agreement being a pathway for people that you can anticipate needing this thing in the future, so that it's not just the same breakthrough process for everybody else who comes after. I think that's an important thing to note.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something we've really kind of started doing in the last couple years, is taking a step back and going, okay, is this something somebody else is going to want to buy? And how often? Because we can set up a different type of vehicle to allow more people to use it and save us manpower, because all of these things that we're talking about, it's not just time on your end, it's time spent by my contract specialist that I would love for them to be doing other things and opening up other avenues of learning, or getting involved with special projects by, setting those things aside and getting those vehicles set up.
Yeah. So I'm going to ask a question that potentially could get you in trouble.
Okay.
The transparent question. This is what we do at DisruptiveAF. We ask the questions that everybody's afraid to ask, and then we answer them, and hopefully we don't get in trouble for them. But here's the question: is that not every place has the mindset that you guys have. at 82nd Cons. Not every place. Now, I have no doubt that every organization has the same pain points, but as you know, there's those people who are willing to press the test and push forward, and then there are those people who are not.
Yeah.
What does an individual do if they find that their organization is stuck in a rut, and they have tried, and they're not getting any help, and they're not getting they don't have the wisdom, they don't have the experience to know what they need to do, and maybe they don't know how have the time to be able to do it, but they find themselves in a spot where they're not getting the help they need. How do they move forward? What do you do? How do you build a relationship that has been, it might be forged in kind of the status quo?
Oh, that's tough. So admittedly, we've always kind of had a really open mindset here at 82Con. So it wasn't just us going to that workshop and coming back and going, we have to change our organization.
Yeah.
We've always been the type that's like, no, we want to help. We are out here to help meet the mission. We are not just paper pushers over here. So that's tough for me because I can't relate to that problem.
That's honest. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I just can't. However, I would say that I could see people being more successful with increments of wins rather than trying to come in and flip the script. So admittedly, I say that I don't have relation to this problem, but I will say years and years ago, we had a lieutenant come in and he wanted to take contracting paperless, right? Which everything's paperless now. But back then, he was, I'm going to write this bullet background paper. I'm going to do it. I'm going to push through the Air Force. We're going to take Air Force contracting paperless. And I fear that this is probably what's happening in a lot of organizations. He got shot down and then he lost all of his motivation. And so what I would encourage people to do is, even if you take a loss here and there, don't stop.
Yeah.
Because you're not always going to be able to change people. And with government service, you guys know this, you've got people who've been in positions for many years and they don't want to change and they're not going to change.
Yep.
And you can't do a lot about it. So I would say you have to inspire your own positivity. You make increments of change that are within your power.
Yeah.
Sometimes your change is your attitude and the way you look at things, even if you can't change policy.
Yeah.
And so I would say that's where people need to start. And it's okay to have those conversations amongst your teams about, what if you could change it, what would you change? Just to get people thinking about it, even if they can't change it within their own organizations.
Mm-hmm.
That's about the best advice.
Oh my goodness. So much of what you just said is like so powerful. And I just realized this podcast is going to last another 2 hours because the first thing I heard was that the culture was there first before the whole RAPIDx thing, which is a really important thing to note, and something that we can do kind of in just looking at the units around us or our the culture that we're in, recognize what is the state of the culture? Are we capable of trying something a little bit different, trying something a little daring? And what do we need to do to be able to get there? The other thing that I heard is this idea of incremental movement. So I'm going to nerd out a little bit. I'm in the middle of a class that's talking a lot about complex systems. And one of the interesting things about trying to change things in a complex system is that you can pull and pull and pull and think that you're going to get somewhere, and it will snap right back to where it was, because there are bigger attractors that are keeping that system in its kind of homeostasis, in its kind of orbit around, the current system. So one thing that is, I think, important for the innovators to note is that, and we saw it with the development of the electronic flight bag. We talked about he didn't bring out this massive. I'm sorry, I'm getting excited. He didn't.
Holy smokes!
He didn't bring out this massive shift from the status quo. What he did was he identified what is the small incremental change that I can introduce that will survive within the current system. And that is so key, because there are things that are trying to hold the system in place. And it's not necessarily because people are bad. It's just, that's the way the complex systems work. So being able to identify those alternate potential states and then kind of shift things in that direction. And that's kind of what MVPs are for, right? Or prototypes, or telling stories about what's possible, is because it makes things more possible to shift in that direction. And I think that is just the guy had a great idea, make things paperless. We all know that is a no duh idea now, and it's so sad that somebody would burn out on such it's an obvious thing that we should have done years ago. But I think that you're right. I think that people are burning out all the time because they are recognizing they have a moonshot and they're recognizing the value of it, but they don't have, how do we start with the culture? How do we start with identifying what's possible for people to accept? How do we identify what's holding us back in the current system? And I'm going to pitch just my whole thing, which is that we need to be engaging in more continuous discovery around what our pain points are, what our culture looks like, what that feels like for the airmen. You got me inspired, Carrie.
Yeah, it couldn't be more true. And one of the things I'd really encourage our listeners to think about is that, we're all going to encounter people that if you look at them, it'd be easy to say, oh, you're stuck in the old way. You're the frozen metal, blah, blah, blah. But the reality is they're human and they've had experiences that have led them to be frustrated. And one of the things that I have found that is the most helpful is block out on your calendar. And I know it's easy to get frustrated with the situations and the people who seem like you're never going to break through. But block out an hour, schedule time with them, and go sit down and talk with them. Take them a 6-pack, take them a cup of coffee, take them whatever it is, and say, listen, I know it sounds like it sounds like there's been frustrations, and here's my frustration. I want to help me to understand what I want to understand your point of view. Why is it that you say this is impossible? Or why is it that you say that, we're not going to be able to do that? And when you prioritize them over the project, everything changes. I would go so far as to say 100% of the time, 99% of the time, if you will stop and take the time to invest into the individual instead of continuing to just beat your head against the wall with the project, you will actually get somewhere. You will actually start seeing results. And this is one of the things one of the things I love about innovation is that when you think about innovation, you're valuing the individual. You're not valuing the project. You care more about the relationship and the ideas and creating a culture in which everybody can be not just inclusive, but everybody can play their part. And we celebrate the parts that people play. Some people are coders. Some people are visionaries. Some people are finance people. And we don't try to be everything. We capitalize on what we do well. And I'd just like to encourage people. I know this turns into a behavioral science and a relational thing, but I'm just telling you, we would be so much better off in the Air Force if we would stop focusing necessarily on the project and start focusing on the individual. Things would move so much faster if you would just stop to have a conversation. That's my soapbox.
No, I agree, but I'm sure being Air Force, you've taken the 4 lenses, so I'm going to guess that you've got a little blue in your color wheel.
Would you be mad if I said I have no idea what you're talking about?
Really? A lot of TV classes, Air Force, they love to do the 4 lenses. I'm really surprised you've never done the 4 lenses.
Yeah, I've done the 4 lenses a couple of times. I always forget my colors, but yeah, I think I might be bluish, greenish, something
Yeah.
in there.
I would call trigger orange, which is the spontaneous, go get a big personality type with a little. No. Blue is your kind of more in touch with your emotions and feelings and being able to understand people and that, anyways.
Yeah, it's so important to have people who understand that human element. And that's, I think, like this is a common thing that I've heard in a lot of these leadership stories, is that it actually started with that human element. It didn't start with the technical thing, right? Because if you can have the most brilliant solution on the planet, but if you don't bring people along, if you don't get their story out there to like change hearts and minds and get them on the same page that this brilliant technical solution needs to be adopted, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. Couldn't agree more.
Business, it's the way you connect with people. Even when describing your innovation, you've got to connect with someone so they fully understand it. And so the people element is absolutely huge.
It's
not
huge.
only involved in it, but how you relay that innovation to other people.
Man, only here on the Disruptive AF podcast can you start out talking about contracting and end up talking about relationships. This is what happens here. Oh man, it's so good. Hey, real quick, we're going to go to our parting shots, just go around the horn. Carrie, starting with you. What's the one thing before we get out of here that you want people to know about RAPIDx, about contracting, about acquisitions?
The one thing I want everyone to know is that we are not here to stop your requirement. And so I will say that the big thing with RAPIDx is that we are going to continue to be a movement, and we're going to continue to get to those contracting people that maybe are called the frozen middle. And we're going to try to inspire them and help them really embody the mission-focused business leader mentality that General Holt is pushing. And that if you will involve us early, I promise that we will be more helpful than you can imagine in getting your requirement.
That's good. That's good. Dan.
Yeah, I've heard a couple of really great things from Carrie today. And like the first thing was just this idea of blazing a trail for the people coming behind you. You know, like not everybody can make it through that trail blazing process, right? So it's really important for us to think about the people coming after and setting up not only like learning to navigate the operating system of the government or the acquisitions process, but doing our part to make that operating system work better for the people who come after us, right? Like, I love that message.
Couldn't agree with you more. It literally, everything changes. Everything changes when we take this mindset, when we dive wholeheartedly into just saying, you know what, there's got to be a way to be able to do it. There's got to be a way to be able to make things happen. It literally changes the environment, not only that we work in, but the things we're able to achieve. So, Carrie, thank you so much for being with us here on Disruptive AF Podcast. Literally, it's been a blast. Dan and I we learn so much from you and all of our guests here at Disruptive AF. If you haven't had the chance, please make sure that you subscribe. If you're watching YouTube, hit that subscribe button right over there and make sure you hit the bell to get notifications for the great content that rolls out here. And also, if you're watching on Spotify or anywhere where podcasts are available, make sure you subscribe right here on Disruptive AF. Dan, we'll see you next week, and thanks for joining. We'll see you.